All right, let us go ahead and get started. Um, could I get a designated note taker for today?
Yeah, good.
Oh, thank you very much, Anthony. First up, we have new faces. Would anyone like to introduce themselves as part of this meeting?
I think this is my first time here. I can start if it's using the right mic and people can hear me. I'm Terrence. I'm on the CMB upstream project, work at Salesforce/Roku, and have been doing CMB stuff for a long time now.
It's nice to have you at this meeting.
Hey, first time, long time. James, used to be VMware, Pivotal, now Google. First time
Welcome.
at this meeting, though.
I'm David, also Salesforce and Heroku. I work on the languages team at Heroku, and also been following CMB stuff for a long time, mostly listening to Terrence's stories and ignoring his pleas to join more meetings. So I decided to change that a little bit.
Well, awesome. Thank you all for being here. First thing up in our agenda is to just go over any open or outstanding RSCs. Pull that up right now. First one we have up is decoupling dependencies from the Buildpacks. This has not had a lot of movement this week. I just have not had a lot of time to focus on this, and Jan is currently out on vacation. So hasn't been much movement on this for the time being. Next up, we have the multi-arch build pack, but this is currently drafted. Jericho, you are here. Do you have anything that you want to talk about on this right now, or are we good to skip over it for this week?
No, we're good to skip over it. Thank you.
Cool. And then the last one is this proposal to introduce new Graal VM build packs. I don't know what the status of this is. It looks like Dan came back with a rather large write-up. I will guess it makes the most sense to ping him and see what needs to happen, if anything, here.
Okay, maybe I can
Anthony, yeah.
shed some light on this one. There is definitely active conversation within the Java maintainers about adding or replacing Graal VM build packs. So to give you, just to give you the basics, Oracle has published new distributions for Graal VM community as well as Graal VM corporate, and the licenses have changed. And the Graal VM, the Oracle Graal VM, so the proprietary one, has a permissive license that allows us probably to distribute it and to let, to basically start having a build pack using this new Graal VM from Oracle. This new, this proprietary Graal VM distribution from Oracle. It is also highly desired by the Spring Native team. Why? Because apparently the performance is much better than the community one, and since once again people can be using it because of this new Oracle license, then it should totally make sense that people start leveraging that for their Spring Native work or any other Java native scenarios. So where we at right now? So we are basically discussing if we need to add new Buildpacks, or if we can just tweak existing Buildpacks and using an environment variable, actually let the user choose whether or not they want to use a GraalVM JVM or a GraalVM builder. So yeah, packaging. Well, basically packaging is one discussion that is, and actually, yeah, you can see that Dan Mikusa yesterday, he has published, he has actually published a POC just to check what it would look like. So there's that, and most importantly, licensing, Oracle licensing. I have Spring people who actually told me that they would check with Oracle and the Cloud Foundry Foundation at large how it can work. What are the required what is the required paperwork? So once again, it's a license free to use, but you know there are some caveats on the way you cannot distribute it along with your software or something like that, or you can use it to build your image, but you're not supposed to embed it. Something along those lines. So there are conditions in the license that need to be checked by lawyers and probably Cloud Foundry lawyers, since well, Paketo belongs to Cloud Foundry somehow. So and yes, we are looking into it.
It sounds like there's a lot of progress happening on that then.
Yeah, it's definitely being looked at. Yeah.
Excellent. Those are the only outstanding RFCs that we have right now. Unless there's anything that people want to discuss on that, we can head back to our next items. All right. After that, we have C&B updates and questions. The only major C&B updates that I can think of is another round of pre-releases for the lifecycle and a new RC for Pack, which I think has hopefully stabilized a couple of problems that we're seeing around extensions work and also flattening. So those are the only two things I can think of.
There was the removal of the C&B target ID, I think, from some of the spec changes from last week while I was out as well.
Okay.
As part of the removing stack bits that have been coming down the pipe as well.
Okay. I don't know how that affects anything that we are currently doing right now, or if it does. So I'd have to check that out. But
It doesn't affect anything yet because the RFC that I'm working on was kind of like going to leverage those things, but we're putting it on hold until all the dust settles. So I think we're all right.
All right, that sounds good. I guess since Terrence, you're here, is there anything that is coming down the pipeline that you feel that we should know about that we might not currently know about?
There's been, I guess, just a lot of discussion around both on our side, on the Roku side, but just how various groups are looking at stack removal, I guess, as a whole. I know that's like a big break and change for a lot of folks, and I think only as of recent, as we've been trying to kind of get these spec PRs through, have we been getting a lot of feedback on how it will work or not work with folks. So I know David has been pushing back a lot on some of the spec stuff, and so I think that's made Natalie a bit frustrated as she's been trying to get some of these spec releases out kind of at the 11th hour, because she just wants to get doc file extensions out into people's hands. So we've been blocking on some of those things, but I figure as one of the larger kind of Buildpack groups, you all may or may not have kind of thoughts for interoperability and how this kind of impacts you all.
Can you just please share a link or context?
Let me see if I can find something.
Thank you.
So one of the discussions was around a community thing. Maybe we'll use that.
Are you pulling up your discussion, or you want the
The
spec
community
PR
one,
too?
yeah, and the spec PR maybe as well. Yeah, so I'll dump it in there.
You have both handy?
And where do I put this? Oh yeah, so yeah, that discussion.
Just,
Yep,
just
that's
in
the right
chat, I
link.
assume.
Oh, okay. So it's already
No, it's okay. Yeah. So that's the CMP stack ID discussion, and then we had somewhere on Slack. I mean, so like this is sort of like why I decided to join today at Jericho's suggestion, and also Terrence and James decided to tag along just to like because we like discussed this a little bit on Thursday in the CMB working group. With like how do you deal with the removal of stacks, etc. So if you want to finish like the project update and stuff, and then we can maybe use this for the open mic like point to just because we thought, hey, we'd just show up and ask a bunch of questions around like how you're planning to deal with some of these things and what your stances and some of these changes are. And I can give a summary when we're ready for that.
I think project updates will be pretty quick. The only main one that I can think of is like straight up 10 minutes before this meeting, I merged the initial implementation of the base UBI builder. There hasn't been a release yet. We'll have to go in and do that, but it is the first builder that we have that's using stack extensions pretty heavily and doing a little bit of a blend of stack extensions and traditional build packs. So yeah, that's sort of our some of our stomping grounds and prove them out for stack extensions. It'll hopefully be just as easy as me going in and cutting a release of just like making a GitHub release for the builder, but I don't necessarily have faith that it will quite be that easy because it never is for the first iteration of this. But yeah, my goal is to have it, hopefully out by, the end of this week or something like that. And then I guess Michael Dawson and Ozzy can start using it and continue to sort of prove out what kind of feedback needs to come back to us and what kind of feedback needs to go back up CNB's way. And I think that's the only project update I have.
You said it uses CMB stack extensions. Is that the Dockerfile stuff, or is that something else?
Yeah, I think it's using like a stack extensions build pack. I have not been super involved in the proving out of this.
Do you know what those extensions do? I assume they're non-rebaseable.
It is typically someone who would be better equipped to tell you what that is. Either Michael Dawson or Ozzy would be here, but I don't personally know. Tim, you've been looking at a couple of the stuff for Node.js. Do you know off the top of your head?
As to the rebaseable question, not entirely sure, but I've just posted a link to the work that's been going on. Hopefully that helps answer some questions.
Oh, nice, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I can also just talk to Ozzy whenever he's back. He usually hops in to the CMB stuff too.
That's the only project update. So if we want to get into just some general open mic discussion, by all means. And if there's anyone here that has to drop off or something else and doesn't care about the open mic discussion right now, by all means, I guess you can leave now or whenever.
So for this discussion, maybe I'll give a bit of a summary of like what's happened maybe the last week or two. Terrence asked me to look into some or give feedback on some of the stack removal consequences. And so like the PR for the for the spec changes. And so the cool thing, and so this community discussion 230 link is maybe worth a read. And also like at the far bottom, if any of you haven't read it, at the far bottom, there's a proposal in there as an alternative to this target ID. The cool thing about the removals of stack is that you can now, as a build pack, only say you're targeting a particular distribution name and version and nothing more specific, right? So the target ID was in the spec, but it would have only been exposed to the build pack at execution time. There was actually no mechanism to match against a specific target ID, which is great for portability, because I think in theory, assuming that the base images for, say, Paketo and Heroku are similar enough, it should be possible that you run certain, I don't know, the Ruby build pack or something of Paketo on top of the Heroku base image in the Heroku builder, right? And I think that's generally really great, because this is sort of like the whole point of CMVs, is this kind of interoperability.
Do you want
There's
to
always going to
share your screen and maybe rewind? I don't know how familiar folks are with, I guess, some of the stack removal changes with target and stuff or not.
Let me see if I can.
But I think seeing the YAML stuff might help with.
Oh yeah, okay, sure.
Visualization.
Okay. Screen. No, I need to find the right. There we go. Share multiple windows. That's pretty cool. Didn't realize that. So the so concepts are going. Stacks are going away, and so what you do is you say, I'm targeting Ubuntu, I don't know, 2204, right? And that's cool. In, I don't know, the average case of someone's running on the full Google App Engine, the full Paketo, the standard Heroku image, right? And so I know that there is a difference between the build image and the run image. The run image could potentially be super slim, but let's ignore that for the moment for the sake of this discussion. Now, obviously, I don't know, like your builds, your precompiled Ruby, right, or your PHP or something, they're linking against dynamic libraries. And so one of the things that the stack ID previously provided was a certainty that some assurance that the libraries that your compiles, binaries like language runtimes, etc., have are actually on the image at build and runtime. And then you don't have to do anything. It just hopefully just works. And we all have integration tests to make sure they do. Now, because a build pack can't say, hey, I'm targeting specifically the IO, the Paketo ID of something full, or the Heroku 20 stack or something, right? Theoretically, you can just run a build pack that targets 2204, the Heroku build pack that expresses this on the Paketo builder, but maybe a library is missing, right? And so if something fails, you as a build pack author maybe have to like LDD all your binaries and shared objects to figure out is something missing or something, and then give an error message to the user, etc. And so I realized that, hey, here's an idea. The target ID, right, really should be not some arbitrary string like full or minimal, but it should be namespace, so that a build pack can at least say, hey, it's io.paketo.run.minimal, for example, right? And then Google App Engine have their own version of minimal with different libraries. And so if I'm the Paketo build pack and I see as a target ID io.paketo.something, all right, that's a stack that I, because it's still like effectively, let's call it a stack, that's something I know about. So I can make some educated guesses around the libraries are there, etc. If not, I maybe print a warning to the user, right? If I see com.heroku.whatever, like a string I don't recognize, or if the string is missing, I'm saying, hey, you're running on the right operating system and version, it's Ubuntu 2204. I know that, if you install, I don't know, libSSL or libGSS API with that Ubuntu version, it is going to be the right ABI version. So if I've compiled on this operating system, stuff's going to work. but maybe that library isn't installed in the first place because you're running some custom minimal image or something from another vendor. But at least if we had a target ID that wasn't sort of like an arbitrary string, but somehow had a reverse domain notation or something, it would be a bit safer for Buildpack authors to code against. And then there were some ideas where I said, hey, you could couple yourself sort of like against CMB target ID. You could just hope that your binaries work and print a warning, etc. You could do sanity checks. And so then I said, but for any of this to really work, the CMB target ID should be namespaced in a way like this. And also should not contain a version number, right? Because the version number is sort of encoded in the Ubuntu version number, for example. And so the idea would be that something like iota.paketo.images.run-minimal means pretty much the same set, right? The same philosophy towards what is minimal, whether it's Ubuntu 2204 or 2404, or if you have an alternative builder for UBI rather than Ubuntu, it would still sort of be the same libraries. Obviously, the package names are different, but as a build pack, you don't really care about that. And so then some blah, blah, blah around ABI compatibility, etc. And there was some discussions back and forth. And at some point I realized, hey, this is really not that great still, because if you have a target ID and you code against it, then for example, a Paketo build pack that works with, that has a simple binary, I don't know, Nginx or something, right? And it doesn't really need a lot. So it works on iota.paketo.images.run-minimal, but also on run-full and also on run-supersized, right? And then you introduce a fourth one, then you have to touch all your build packs. But more importantly, all the build packs out there, right? Maybe someone builds a build pack, the best Nginx build pack in the world that should run, it should work on Heroku's Ubuntu and on Paketo's Ubuntu and on Google App Engine's Ubuntu. It would have to encode all these strings. So I said, hey, why don't we make it basically a list of labels, and then you just declare compatibility. And so that's the proposal a bit further down, where instead of saying, hey, this is my ID and this is my ID, right? So this is not a real file, but this is effectively what comes out of the run image analysis. You would say, hey, I have a list, because this is what you would have to do, right? Is it in one of these, right? But this is not enough, because you also have to check for iota.paketo.run.minimal and for gcp.standard and all these things. But it's not great long term, because we would have to chase after every single build pack author out there if one of us ever adds a variant for these base images. It becomes really hard to then introduce new ones, etc. Also, if someone runs a custom builder with a custom build base image, they're not gonna, hopefully not gonna call it iota paketo something, right? And so immediately any sort of sanity checks that maybe the Paketo build packs make, or maybe the Heroku build packs also, like we start testing them against the Paketo builder, right? Like that's, for interoperability purposes, a desirable long-term outcome, that we have at least basic tests for each other's builders and build packs. And so if we instead made it a set of labels, so this would be the full Paketo's metadata effectively, right? Instead of saying I have an ID, it's like a list of compatibility strings. And the Heroku one would be this. And then as a build pack, obviously you have to then split that envar, because it exposes a comma separated environment variable to the build pack. But the build pack can say, hey, is it one of those, right? And as a person who wants to have their own base image, I can say, hey, I build a base image, and all the packages that are in the standard Paketo and the standard GCP and the standard Heroku, not in this case, images are there, right? So I declare all these labels. So immediately Google's build packs just work. Paketo's build packs just work. Obviously, it's now my responsibility as the maintainer of that builder and its build image to ensure that if paketo.run.tiny gets a new package, that I add that to it, but at least it would be possible, right? And similarly, if Heroku ever wanted to add like some sort of supersized or minimal version on top, we could just add that as a compatibility label. And all existing build packs out there, let's say I work with a standard Heroku image, would continue to work, right? You could have debug variants easily that to the build packs behave exactly the same. If, I don't know, another large corporation that's in the business of cloud services wants to embark like on the CNB train, right? They could, for a while at least, in their builder images, declare, hey, we are compatible with Paketo and GAE and Heroku, and immediately all these build packs would start working, right? Until they have enough traction to convince the build pack community to add tests, and then maybe these checks, right? And so obviously, like in terms of like checks and for a build pack to know what exactly am I even running on, this is really only relevant, or I would say 99% of cases, it's only relevant for binaries that the build packs build, right? Web servers, language runtimes, other programs that dynamically link. But still, I think it would be a cool thing. So this is what we discussed on Thursday.
Did you mention that if, for example, one of the labels is actually, I don't know, shipping out a new version, how do you express that? Because there was no version in the compatibility list, as far as I could see.
Yeah, but the well, builders always pull the latest build image, right? So if you update a build pack and say, hey, I am, let's say, I don't know, at Heroku, we add FFmpeg to the stack image. So our base image, right? And then the next day, a build pack author sees and says, amazing, finally I can put some stuff in. And so they say, hey, great, if I see it's a Heroku thing, I install an FFmpeg wrapper, whatever. The next time someone picks that up, right? The next time someone picks that up, as a user, the build pack will be then built with a new builder, because you have to release a builder with the build pack for that to be out there. And so the user immediately also picks up the new build image. I actually thought about versioning, right? So that you have the compatibility labels and then a slash and then some sort of number, but that it makes life quite a bit harder for the build pack authors, because now you need to parse that as well. But yeah, I mean, that could be a possibility, right? Because theoretically, let's say at Heroku, we see a lot of Paketo build pack usage, and we just decide that for our builders, we don't just set compatibility for Heroku, but also for Paketo. I think that should, like, across vendors, just generally not be a thing that we do, but let's say we did it, right? The moment you at Paketo then added some packages to your base images, we would immediately have to add those as well, right? And that's the consequence. So that as a vendor, you have to understand, if you express compatibility with someone else, you really need to be on top of that. So I think it's mostly for build pack authors to easily distinguish between different vendors' variants, and for users of non-vendor base builders and base images, to say, hey, I have my, you know, and I'm probably even they're probably even basing it on top of the Paketo or the Heroku base image, right? But they say, I need a few more packages and some other, I don't know, an image magic policy change, whatever, right? And then I say, okay, but it is compatible with these vendors' base images, and I'm taking care of this because I'm running this on my own infrastructure or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
So what happened then on Thursday is that an argument was made that really extensions solve this, and we shouldn't, like, it's because it's a better crutch, but it's still a crutch, just like CB target ID is, right? And so I then proposed, and that's what ended up happening, is like that, okay, if that's the stance, then we should at least, for the moment, remove CMB target ID from the spec, so that build pack authors do not start writing code against it. Because I think this would cause all sorts of like undesirable tight coupling. But really the question is, if extensions really solve this? And so, like, I've been talking with Terrence quite a bit, also with James, about how we see like extensions playing out, because someone also from VMware, I forget who it was, mentioned that they did already or plan to do some sort of like squashing of base images with extensions. So like if you use extensions as a user, and the extensions install a bunch of system packages. After the build is concluded, the base image, the run image, right, plus all the extension layers would be squashed together into a new unique sort of run image. And those would just be consistently rebuilt, continuously rebuilt. And then rebasing is not a problem. Because one of the things that I noticed in the spec, and so I brought this up for discussion yesterday in the Buildpacks channel on the CNCF Slack, is that, and I think this is an unintentional leftover from an older version of this whole Docker file thing. There is something called something.layer.rebasable, whatever, for the extension. So if an extension produces a Docker file layer, a Docker file for an extension layer, and doesn't explicitly set the rebasable label to true, then the whole thing becomes non-rebasable in the sense that you can't rebase the base image without a full rebuild, which to me, and I've tried to find why that is, because with ABI compatibility and everything, I can't think of a situation where an extension layer can do something that makes it impossible to rebase the base, the base run image. But maybe one of you has an idea about
it's because of the way how the layers work. If they're anything that's shared, like if you move files, if you delete anything, like the markers don't get carried through. So technically, like ABI compatibility does not guarantee like image safety in the sense that, like if you change a package, like the package list in Ubuntu, and I have an extension that then also touches that file, and you rebase, that info will be different, but it doesn't like merge it, right? It like literally just one layer wins. And so like,
you mean like a package list or something, and like an app package list like this?
Yeah, package list, but really like any file or marker on the file system. So like, I mean, technically, like it is not safe. Like in theory, you could make a thing where it's like, yeah, like the binary probably runs because the SOs and things are in the right place, and like you're not doing anything crazy. But like technically, you have actually like if you were to create this image, you run it through, like you would not get the same like set of layers, right? Like you would not get the same image at the end of the day. So that's why it's like unsafe. Like it rebasable set to false because it's really any file system changes, and because they're essentially layered on top, right?
The example that explicitly disables rebasing in the original RFC from a long while ago, it's let me actually hold on. That's a good link to put in the discussion document so you can all see it. That's actually, I mean, that explicitly RMRF varlib list star because I think exactly for this reason, but it still says it's not rebase safe. And so the thing I think, I'll put the link in here in the Google Doc. Because the thing is, if we get even moderate adoption of extensions across, you know, the CMD ecosystem, this means that for any, like rebasing will be impossible for anybody, because I guess most use cases for these extensions will be OS package installs. And that means no rebases for anyone ever anymore. That's issue number one. Issue number two is you have to put extensions into the builders, right? Like a user of Buildpacks can't just in their in their project.toml say, I'm using the following extensions, whitelist them or something. A Buildpack can't just say, I need the following extensions. Like the extensions have to be passed into pack if they're not in the builder, or they have to be added to the builder, which means, you know, Heroku would have to add all of Paketo's and all of Google's and other vendors' extensions and vice versa, which I think is not realistic because the possible permutations testing guarantees you make to your customer. So I think because like this all works really well if you control the infrastructure, right? If you're doing a pack build and then you're with, let's say, I don't know, the Paketo builder, the Paketo extensions, and the Paketo Buildpacks, and then deploying it on your own infrastructure, easy. If you're pushing some code up to Google App Engine or Heroku, where it's supposed to get built, then that gets tough. Doesn't matter who controls the extensions of Buildpacks, right? And so it's, from the discussion on Thursday, it sounded like your VMware colleagues were hoping or were hinting at the Paketo projects all moving towards extensions for their binaries. But like, I wonder how that's going to play out with like, how do these then work well on other builders, right? And in, let's say, on passes like Google's or Heroku's.
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff in there, right? So I'll just address specific points. So first of all, in this crowd group, like today, you're not going to get a lot of feedback on rebasing because unless like, I don't know, Jericho, what y'all are doing, like Rapid 7, but looking at who's in the Zoom call, most of the folks today have not got a lot of experience to rebasing. SAP folks might, IBM folks might, I don't know, but they're not here to speak to that. So that whole section of the conversation, I don't think you're going to get anything today.
That's fine.
Taking a step back, I'm like, as I'm hearing this, I'm sort of like wearing two hats, right? I'm wearing the hat of like a stacks maintainer building a stack and builder maintainers building builders. I'm also wearing the hat of like a Buildpack author who's like kind of consuming the stack. And I'm very much in favor. So first of all, I didn't get a chance to read the RFC yet or the discussions yet. So like, if anything I'm about to say is like, just go read it, just tell me, because I don't want to waste people's time. But I'm very much in favor of interoperability, but I'm having a hard time getting over the high level idea that we're trying to collapse a dynamic problem into a static description. Like all of this conversation, all of like labels versus like, you know, arrays versus like single strings, like fundamentally we're trying to say like, we're trying to make guarantees about a moving target that we can't see because it's like, even at build time, you can't see it till you're actually running a process, by which time 5 months ago, someone's already created a TOML file with some data. So that data is static, essentially. The evaluation is dynamic. Like, we're never going to square that circle, right? Like, you can try to like tighten it a little bit. You can try to make some constraints, but ultimately we're going to keep reinventing the two solutions of static identifiers and dynamic mix-ins, extensions, right? Like, keep calling it different things, but ultimately, like, I'm having a hard time figuring out, like, how is this proposed solution better than what we have today? Like, what problem are we solving? Maybe I'll start with that question.
Yeah. So I think the initial problem that we're trying to solve is that the Buildpacks, it would be great if Buildpacks had some sort of a reliable indicator that they run on, maybe not necessarily the builder, that's the slightly easier part to figure out, but the target, the run target is something they know as a known set of packages, right? And so
there's two things there, right? First of all, so there's two levels of like package compatibility. There's the package compatibility required by the Buildpack itself. So like, let's take your example of Ruby. If I pre-compile Ruby, which I do as a Ruby Buildpack maintainer, I pre-compile it, dynamically link that pre-compiled Ruby against like the stack that I'm going to be shipping against. So I know Jammy full stack, I know that Ruby has all the libraries Ruby needs to run. Then there's the second level, which is the application might itself require dynamic linking to other libraries, which
for the bundle install.
So that problem, like, I have no idea what's going to happen at runtime, right? Like Ruby itself will run because it's dynamically linked to the right version of the SSL or, you know, whatever things that Ruby actually needs. But like, you could still fail at build time or even at runtime if you don't have the application required like dynamic libraries. So that problem, I think you always have to put away to the side and be like, you can never solve that problem, right? Because there's an infinite set of packages that an application might dynamically link to, and you can't encode that in any sort of reasonable list. So even if you just scope it to like the packages that the dependencies of the Buildpacks need, like that's still a dynamic problem, right? Because like if a new version of Ruby
Yep.
comes out that requires
Yep.
a new library,
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
my version of Ruby that I'm now pre-compiling, I need to add a package to my stack. But if you're expecting my Ruby build pack to work in your stack, you're going to have to then go and add that package as well.
Yep.
Okay. Is that desirable?
So so one of the things is like, if let's say we don't have any sort of identifier, right? But we know as a build pack, we know we're running on something that matches what we declared in our targets, because we said target distribution is Ubuntu N2204, for example, right? And I mean, the lifecycle picked us, right? It said, okay, that's compatible with the run and build thing. So I'm running on the builder. I'm pulling down my Ruby. And the bundle install works, which must mean that at least for the Ruby binary, all the dynamic linking is there. So now, how do I now know that at execution time, the run image has, I don't know, lib readline, right? Like whatever Ruby links against. It could be that it's not there. And so right now we have no guarantees. And actually at build time, you can't do anything useful to it because you can't inspect the run image. It's not there for you, right? Which I think if you think about the more classic stacks where like, you know, the sort of promise that is sort of implicit, and this would not have to be codified anywhere or spec'd anywhere, but it's sort of like for Heroku, any dynamic library that's in the build image is also there in the run image, right? But others might see that differently. And so let's assume, or let's say that someone builds a build pack and they want to target some new vendors and they are big fans of super minimal run images, and they say, oh, we don't care. Like the build images are super comprehensive, but the run images are minimal because we have mostly Go people building their apps, right? And what, I don't know, some arbitrary fantasy reason that I'm trying to come up with. But so then as a build pack, like, you know, you're just like, okay, my build worked fine, and then at runtime it crashes. I think it would be desirable if I could say, hey, you know, the target ID or the target compatibility list or whatever that I'm seeing here includes something that I know has all the necessary libraries for my stuff at runtime. Yes, you can't make any promises about your bundle install having pulled in arbitrary gems, and are they really there in the run image, right? Like, I think we always have to account for the possibility that the run image will be so drastically different. I think that for those of us in the business of providing run images, or what, I mean, right now we're doing stacks, right? It's probably not going to be the norm that the run image deviates drastically from the build image or something like this, right? Because it just reduces our burden of like our maintenance burden. If we say, hey, the Paketo full run image, it has a bunch of libraries, and you're running on the corresponding full builder. So, you know, there's not going to be any huge gaps, because otherwise people will open GitHub issues every 5 days and every 5 minutes, and it's going to be overwhelming. If someone says, well, but I want to bring my own run image and it's going to super minimal, and are like, you know, we have like some person who knows Linux and they did it and they said it's perfect, and then it crashes at runtime, that's their problem, right? Because I mean, that's fine. But the thing is that if you can't inspect the run image, you have no sort of like label or hint at what the run image is. You can't even warn the user of these possibilities. And so I'm not actually saying that we shelved this CMB target compatibility thing together with the CMB target ID for the moment. I'm not saying we want it back in. I'm more like wondering if, let's presume that extensions were the solution to this, right? Or are they, right? Like, so on the Paketo side, for example, like, how do you see this like playing out longer term? Like, do you think the norm is going to be people using the Paketo full builder and run images for most cases? Because that's, I mean, you know, most bundle installs with a bunch of not even super esoteric gems, like even PQ or whatever, PG gem, they're just going to work. And you know, it's fine, it's at runtime. And really, one of the points of CMBs is that apps are easy to build. You don't have to mess with Docker files. So for the average, I don't know, Python, PHP also, right? It has a lot of like everything is pre-compiled there. But Ruby, where you have a lot of dynamic linking, is the long-term goal gonna be, yes, we will always have these stacks, whatever we gonna call them now, right? Like, but some sort of a full builder and a minimal builder. The minimal builder is for people who know what they're doing. The full builder is for people who just want to get on with their lives and build some Ruby apps. Or do you think the journey is more for everyone's going to be more towards the extensions solution, where Ruby,
So
the Ruby Buildpacks says, here's the libraries.
before I answer that, James, did you want to say something? I thought I saw you jump in. No, okay, sorry. I thought you were like waving. I don't want to speak for everyone in the Paketo community. I just don't. I personally don't see a world in which we can offer any sort of sensible, holistic experience without providing what is essentially a stack today, right? Whether it's like, oh, we have one minimal image and a bunch of extensions, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, like the Paketo community is going to have to present a bunch of build packs and a bunch of stacks, or whatever we're going to call them, essentially build and run image combinations that have been, with or without extensions, that are all kind of tested together and packaged up together. So to me, like, and then using that as a segue to kind of one of my other points, like, at the end of the day, like, it seems like we're just taking one static piece of information and breaking it apart into multiple static pieces of information. But that isn't going to change the user experience. It isn't going to change what we build and what we test and what we ship. So I'm not against this. I just don't really understand it. Like, I don't really understand how we get anything different, right?
So, I mean, so one, I think the biggest advantage, I think, from a user's perspective would be that, I don't know, let's say the Paketo Ruby build pack, right, has been tested against the Paketo stack and also the Heroku one. And so if you see, you know, the compatibility label list, whatever, is either of those, then everything's fine, because you know that, you know, like, there's very diligent people maintaining the quote unquote stacks at Paketo and at Heroku. So the run image is always going to have the necessary libraries. And if the bundle install succeeds and it does its dynamic linking, stuff's going to work at runtime, fine. If you see an unknown stack ID or something else, at the end, you might print a warning, right? And say, hey, the build or base image, blah, blah, is not known. Please take care that if you're running into trouble at runtime, you might be missing some dynamic packages. Or if the bundle install fails outright with Ruby not finding something dynamically linked, right? You could go and LDD all the executables and SO files and say, hey, the following packages are missing. And it looks like you're maintaining your own base image here. You need to install some packages. So whereas you could skip that, right? If you knew you were running on Paketo's image.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I am cognizant that, like, there's really only two people in this conversation. So I'm just going to give a quick response, and then I think maybe we should find a new forum for this. So it sounds like the goal of this, like, the end goal of removing stack IDs is to essentially give a slightly looser compatibility to allow you to maybe run on a thing that the build pack maybe didn't know about ahead of time. Right. Otherwise, 99% of the user experience is going to be the same. Like, Paketo is still going to, like, make stacks and build packs, and Heroku is going to make stacks and build packs, and they might happen to work together, they might not. At the moment, they can't, and the proposal is to basically make it so maybe they can, and it's kind of the user's problem.
I guess let me,
which I think is much better already.
In that, like, I think a lot of build packs are using like the like any stack, which is the wildcard, and not tying to like specific stack ID. Like, you might list your thing, but then you do like stack equals star, which is any like Linux thing. So that's basically like, this will run anything, which in reality it's like, if your thing was built for like a Ubuntu Debian based thing, like, clearly it doesn't work on a UBI image until you manually add support for it or whatever. And so like that any stack was clearly a lie, right? And so the thought process behind rooming stack was like, okay, well, maybe we should move towards, you actually get stuff like the distribution and the version and kind of things that are actually helpful. And so you could be like, I actually want to, for some reasonable amount of support, like, be able to run on Ubuntu. And as a build pack author, I know that. And as a stack author, I I can actually like say, or like it'll pull it from, you know, Etsy OS release, blah, 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 right? Like from the actual like operating system anyways, right? Like from the file system. And so we can populate that information. And so you at least have more metadata than like wildcard, which is how it exists today, right?
And you can express it for the life cycle, right? So you don't even get matched against, let's say, Red Hat base builders if you don't have Red Hat binaries in the Ruby build pack. And so I think this is already a big step, right? But so mainly, I mean, like I really don't want to like sort of like convince you all that this CMP compatibility ID thing is the right approach. It's more like the outcome of that discussion last week on Thursday was, hey, but extensions solve this. And so as I started diving into extensions, I realized, well, if everyone moves to extensions because extensions are so tightly coupled to the builders, then we are back to square one where particular build packs only work with the particular builders again. And then you cannot, like, let's say at Heroku, we were to move to extensions for all these libraries, right, for all of our build packs, then they just wouldn't work on the Paketo builders anymore because the Paketo builder doesn't have the Heroku image extensions. And so that's my main concern now. That plus the way that the fact that an extension can disable rebasing, which for at least us as Heroku, I presume also for the folks over at Google with Google App Engine, would be catastrophic because, I mean, we are in the business of rebasing these things for customers, and we can't rebuild every single app, right? A, it's not safe. B, it's computationally outrageously expensive to rebuild thousands, hundreds, millions of apps every single time we update our base images with just, I don't know, the libSSL security fix. Plus, if extensions themselves are not rebasable, which they are not, right? Like unless you do some tricks with squashing them or something, which I heard about last week. But I mean, extensions themselves, if those are really ubiquitous and a lot of libraries end up being installed through image extensions, the image extensions, those libraries do not get updated as part of a base image rebase. And so you end up with security vulnerabilities that will not get mitigated until the next time you build your app, which is sort of the point of rebasing. And so I'm wondering if, yeah, I don't know.
I see there's Jericho and Anthony both have hands up.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll go first. I have a question that was triggered when you were discussing, I think, Terence, when you were talking about wildcard and, you know, no way to actually, I mean, wildcard being a lie, and that, you know, it would probably not work everywhere. It just reminded me that in this discussion, we haven't talked about, you know, the build plan resolver. So what about, I mean, of course, yeah, we have discussed about extensions and then labeling the run images. So I totally get that, but there's another widespread solution. I mean, that would solve, I believe some of the problems that we talked about is basically the build plan saying that my build pack, I don't know if it's, let's say it's the Maven build pack, I need a Java, I need in the plan, I require in the plan a build pack that provides Java functionality. What I'm saying is that what about why wouldn't this be enough in some of the cases? I'm not saying it's going to work in all the cases that provide libraries or whatnot, but sometimes, you know, you just need the one-off binary or whatever. But I mean, you know, just something quite simple, and then you can just say, oh, there's another build pack that I require that will get that for me. So just say that wildcard, if you have wildcard as well as, I don't know, a build plan that is modulable enough, why shouldn't it work for most use cases? Or maybe I'm confused, I don't know. But
I think there's different kinds of build packs, right? Like if you're talking about a Maven build pack, it probably does. You expect Java to be there, and you don't have compiled artifacts. You're not like linking against anything on the OS. And so all you really need is to be able to execute it. But that Java build pack that you depend on probably is not wildcard stack. Or maybe Java probably is, but like I think like if you could probably do equivalent thing for like in like Ruby land, like I expect to run bundler or npm, right? Like
Yeah.
I expect the runtime and it should just work because it's just JavaScript files at the end of the day.
But I think that world is very far off.
But the thing that installs Node, like that Node engine, is actually potentially stack dependent. I mean, it probably actually isn't, because I think Node works on a bunch of stuff.
But vice versa, right? Like if let's assume the Node Buildpack used Ruby or something. But I think so that world is pretty far off. Like, you know, like I don't know if the Paketo Buildpack, Ruby Buildpack has a dependency on Node, expecting that you could use the Paketo Ruby Buildpack, but with the Node Buildpack from Heroku. I mean, so that's very far down the road. Like, because initially, like when this first came up, all of CMBs, we had this vision of like, oh, imagine you had a Node engine from Paketo in the full Node.js Buildpack from Heroku. But I mean, it's not realistic, because like even that, just the decisions would have to be uniform across all vendors. Like, where does the engine's Buildpack responsibility stop? What does each little bit do? How are they structured? But these dependencies, right? So saying I need Java is a bit different from I need a library to dynamically link against, I think. It's because one is just you execute the binary, and if it's sort of updated, you might not care as much as like with a dynamic linking case.
Sorry, Jericho, could you do you have a second? Because we only have about we're about to go over, but so Jericho, if you can.
That's fine. Yeah, I was just going to say that the stack ID today is really useful, and the star is also really useful, particularly like with Python, because Paketo like has their builder, they know what they have on that image, and then you know, if you have the stack ID and it still works with the Paketo stack, then when you're on the Paketo stack, you use those dependencies. You can say, I know I'm on this stack. Let me pull these tar files. But I'm not on the stack. I'm going to pull down, you know, the source and build from source. So, I mean, getting rid of it is, I think, potentially like you're going to have to create some solution that will replace that. So
the idea there, right?
Yes. You know, just keep that in mind.
The idea there would be, instead of using the stack ID, you use Ubuntu and the version number, right? Because theoretically that should be enough. Like, at least you know that if it links against libSSL, lib whatever, on that Ubuntu 2204, it's always in the same location, whether it's the GCP or the Heroku or the Paketo version of the Ubuntu, like, you know, Ubuntu with all the images on top. You just don't know that the library is there. But if it is there, it will be in the right location and your program will run. So anything compiled on Ubuntu for Paketo will work on Heroku's same Ubuntu version if all the necessary libraries are there. And so that was the idea behind this compatibility labels list, is saying the Buildpack knows that, you know, it's a promise that if Paketo says, hey, it's Paketo.full, it's the following libraries. They're always there. They never get removed because the spec forbids breakages there at runtime, right? And so that would basically be a more flexible, almost inversion of control coupling and replacement for the stack ID. But obviously, like, ideally, we wouldn't need it at all, right? We had even better mechanisms.
Yeah, I'll just say,
question. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I was going to say my 2 cents is, like, so you guys, Paketo worries about their Paketo stacks and builders and Buildpacks, and, you know, Heroku does the same thing. And like, I'm kind of like, I want to consume your Buildpacks, but I'm bringing my own builder. So there's like different kind of users that use these things in different ways. So it's whatever we end up doing. It should still be easy for me to say, well, I don't want to have to pretend I'm your stack, or probably just a compatibility thing, just to pretend. I mean, if it has to be that way, that's fine. But ideally, it would not be something where I'm impersonating builders if I don't have.
I linked into the chat, Jericho, but I did push for the fact that, like, as a Buildpack, you can say, I don't care about the distro. So I think that would solve your use case. Like, you would still, if it gets provided as Buildpack, you can use that information to basically do that switch case you're talking about. So I think the AnyStack will still be supported in some
that is still possible,
but it's just not, it won't be stack equals star, right? Like, you'll say like distro, like.
But I think what he was saying is that it's useful to know the stack ID, because you know where you even need to be pulling stuff from, right? So if the stack ID is now gone, how to even
Well,
know packages.
it sounds like Paketo has a short circuit thing, but if you're using Paketo stack, they will pull the tarball, and if you aren't, then it will pull the source and compile it. So like they want to be able to basically have that switch case or that conditional, which you can still do.
Yeah, which it sounds like you could do by just looking like if there is a specificity in the distribution lookup, that's one thing, and if there's not, then you could pull from the source elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. That works. Yeah.
It's a can of worms.
It is.
Yeah,
I'm just really
interoperability and compatibility.
extensions.
Yeah, I think I guess to close some of this up, and we probably should tear this offline or some discussion otherwise, is like I think I like, as a project person, I would love to have just more interoperability between build packs and stacks and stuff. And I think that wasn't as true in kind of classic build pack land before CMB. And I don't want to hopefully create a future where things are super tied down, but you know, you got to do what you got to do for the business that you work for at the end of the day. And so since like if a build pack requires an extension, it makes it significantly less interoperable. And so I think those are some of those concerns of like, if the Paketo PHP build pack requires these extensions, like it's just never running on like the Google stack and the Google platform. And it will potentially try to force vendors to either support that stuff. But you know, like it,
but yeah, we
would
get
just be a negative
fragmentation.
experience.
Yeah, for sure. That would not.
I think that's like the concern probably more than anything.
Yeah. That I think, I mean, as an outcome of last week's discussions and then looking into it more this week, like that's, I think my main concern is wide use of extensions will cause lock-in again. You can only use vendors build packs with the vendors builder. You probably can't rebase once if one of the extension layers says I'm not rebaseable, your base images is not rebaseable, which is catastrophic for passes. So I think, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'll just add to the rebase conversation. I mean, David, you already said it. Like, you don't want to have to rebase every little thing. The extension rebase problem is definitely a problem. I wasn't even using rebase until recently, and now that I am, I could not switch.
So fast.
It's pretty important once you start using it.
Is there it's about 5 minutes over. Is there a good place for us to continue this conversation offline?
Yes, we started talking about it in the Buildpacks channel on the CNCF Slack. If you're on that
discussion as well that David linked to on the Buildpacks community, it's probably a good place. Like Dan McCoos is already kind of conversing there, but it'd probably be good to just get other voices from Paketo as well.
I mean, that's not about the extensions, right? Like we sort of like cut that out of there, or that's not a thing in that discussion yet. Also on Thursday, I think we'll hopefully pick this discussion up again in the CNB working group from last week, because now I have a few more questions for some of the feedback the VMware folks gave there on the extensions. So
yeah, we can tag you in, Force.
Feel free, me and Rob.
Okay.
I think Rob is probably going to be a better person to tag in right away because he'll probably have some more opinions.
I got to drop, guys. Thanks for the meeting.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all.
See y'all.
Thanks for hearing my long rants. Bye.